Welcome to this episode of the Structural Engineering Channel, a podcast focused on helping structural engineering professionals stay up to date on technical trends in the field and to help them succeed in their careers and lives. I'm your host, Matt Picardal, and in this episode, I'll be talking with Peter Johann, COO and co-founder of Pirros, where we'll talk about his journey and lessons learned going from a structural engineer all the way to co-founder of a software that helps architects and engineers streamline the detailing process in their drawings and Revit models. Before we get started, here's a quick word from our sponsor for this episode, PPI, a Kaplan company.
Before we dive in, we'd like to recognize our sponsor for this episode, PPI, a leader in engineering exam prep for the FE and PE exams. PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode.
Hey, Peter, thanks for joining us. Could you share with us how your journey to become a design engineer all the way to co-founding Pirros? What was that journey like for you, and how'd you start off?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks for having me on as well. I guess I'll start at the beginning. Kind of normal route. I went to school, University of Michigan, civil engineering, structural emphasis. Went and worked for a year in San Francisco as a structural engineer before I did my master's. Then went to UCLA for my master's program, structural engineering. Went to KPFF. Started working at KPFF down in the LA office, and probably a year and a half in, started helping out. We had a in-house design technology group, software development group, making in-house tools. And I started helping out on some of those projects. One of the projects I was helping out on, and it was kind of in tandem with the project I was working on, was this topology optimization, where we run a bunch of different iterations of an ETAPS model and see where which models perform better, just trying to create software that can optimize, right, the creation of these moment frames. But there's a bunch of like little in-house tools like that. And then there was always this tool that we were thinking about, a detail management platform that we were thinking, hey, there's so many details that we're constantly reusing from projects, and this should be in a searchable format. Right now we have this detail library. It has some details that are standard details, but there's just so much of like asking around the office, hey, where have you done something like this in the past? Trying to get guidance, especially as a younger engineer, right? And just not knowing how to navigate. And so we kind of sat down to start doing it, and it was like, this is a little bit too big of an endeavor to do in-house. At the same time, that the guy leading the software development group, he actually we met at Michigan. He went to Michigan. He was there while I was there. We had become pretty good friends, and we started talking to some of our colleagues, to friends in the industry, and we're kind of noticing there was no tool to do this in the industry. And so the timing was kind of all right, and we're like, hey, let's go and try this. I think originally I was thinking, hey, we're too young to like start our own thing. Like, we don't have enough experience. Like, we don't know what we're doing. But the more we kind of dug into it, the more we realized this is actually the right time to do it. You're never going to be ready to start your own company. You're never going to be prepared to do that. But at this stage of my life, I have less responsibilities. I have more that I can kind of devote to it. There's less risk of kind of starting something new. And so it ended up just being the right timing. And then, we started this company back in August of 2022.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So it looks like you were your master's, and then you're designing buildings, and then some things that you could help out with. It seemed like did you know programming, or did you have to learn programming, or how did that come about?
Not at all. I still barely know how to code. I took, one class in college, didn't really like it, and didn't stick with it. I wish I did a little bit more. And then, when I was working in the software development group, I was starting to do some coding, but very basic, right? Like Excel, macro, VBA stuff, and very like simple coding. So I wasn't kind of going to the weeds with that. That was also another reason why I thought there's no way I can start a software company, right? I don't know. I'm not technical. I don't know how to code. Mm-hmm. But again, I would say those were the two hangups that I had before starting the company. Was one, I don't know how to code. I'm not technical. And two, I'm like way too young to be like starting my own company. But again, as I was starting to dig into it more, realizing that, building a software company is so much more than just building the product. And Ari, my co-founder, does have that technical background, does have that technical side. You obviously need someone on your founding team to be technical. But, throughout the company, the platform that we've built, I have written 0% of the code. So I obviously kind of have an understanding of what's going on now a little bit, but I'm not technical. But also another point I want to make is it is so much easier to code in today's age than it was even 5 years ago. And I'd say like AI is a huge part of that. And we could obviously kind of dig into that later. But in terms of learning code, like even Ari, he only had a minor in computer science. He never practiced as a software developer. He didn't even major in computer science. And all of it, he was just really good at learning. And there's all the tools are out there. And it's just about how motivated you are to kind of learn how to do it. And so he was able to kind of build the whole thing. And now he's, a very, very experienced and well-versed software engineer, but not really 2 years ago when we started.
Yeah, and it seems like you learn by fire, but even on the things that you were struggling with, it was like, yeah, okay, we don't have the technical stuff, but there's all this other stuff that I can help out on in terms of, the vision's a huge part of it. that's how you find a company, right? You two need to have a big vision, and you provide that support. And it's like, oh, that's where you can really shine. You don't need to learn all the coding. And
exactly.
And then I guess when you were starting your firm, did you ever think that you'd miss like the design aspect of structural engineering, or this is the way that you could help out the industry, like finding a new purpose?
Yeah, no, I definitely did. And I think there are definitely parts of it that I do miss still. And I think that it was a combination of a bunch of factors, and also knowing that potentially we have this really unique opportunity to do this right now. And to kind of try something new, and opportunity like this potentially won't present itself. And if we're not successful, or if it doesn't work out, or if we don't like it, we can probably always come back, right? And come back to a structural engineering firm. We have enough experience now. And so there certainly was at the beginning, a little bit of hesitancy because we did enjoy our jobs, right? But it's kind of just like there were two good options, and this was a really unique kind of opportunity that was presented to us. And so we just ran with it.
Yeah. And it's a good time. And it's like, yeah, a good time for you and your co-founder. And it seems like, yeah, it's more of the bigger picture. I kind of find that in project management, where I am doing less of the engineering work, but it's for the bigger vision, because without the managers, the engineers, they need guidance, they need help. And even though I'm doing less engineering, it's more of the bigger picture, helping the team out. So seems like that's what you did on a bigger scale.
Yeah. And what I'll add to that too is that's also been, I think the coolest part about it is when you do see the bigger picture, I think you're motivated more, and you're a little bit more bought in to the whole thing. Right. And when you're a younger design engineer, it's so day-to-day tasks, and it's you start to at times fall into that mentality of a kind of clock in, clock out. I just need to do what's kind of presented to me. And I'd say as you kind of move up a little bit, whether you're still in structural engineering like yourself, or, for me, I'm kind of just fell into that where I'm, my own boss now, I'm running my own company, and everything is kind of relying on me, and I'm more or less running the show for what I'm doing. It's really motivating, and being fully bought in like that, it motivates us to work really hard and to be bought in and fully bought in. And also then in turn is more rewarding, right? When the more you put in, the more you get out. Kind of mentality.
Yeah, it's that fulfillment aspect of it, right? Once you have that vision, you're going for it.
Yeah,
it's you want to work. Yep,
exactly.
What was that process like? So you're in the software development aspect of your firm, and then you were spotting problems, spotting some of the pain points. Was there a process that you kind of did? You're like, oh, we got a pain point. Maybe what if we just do software? Or did you have a more in-depth approach and how to find the needs of the market?
I want to say that we had an in-depth approach, but not really. It was more we saw a problem while we were at the company, which was people redesigning details or not having access to the right information. And then we saw a very kind of clear solution to that. And that's how it all started. And it was just let's build this solution and then start talking to people about the solution and see if they want it. And so the original product, and in startup speak and in software speak, it's you build an MVP, a minimum viable product. And so that is essentially a very bare bones product, the minimum product that you need to build to that it gets across what the solution is trying to do, right? And so for us, that was just a web-based platform that was able to extract Revit details from Revit projects and then be searchable. And so we tried to build that and already essentially built it in a couple months. And then from there, we started talking to people saying, hey, and showing them what we had and saying, hey, is this something you'd use? Is this something that you want? Is this something that you would pay for? And early on, there was some pretty good traction, but then, as you start to talk to more people, then it starts to morph into a kind of more comprehensive product, which is now what we call a detail management platform, right? It's not just like a archival tool for your projects, searching between your past projects. It's a full like kind of end-to-end solution to one, reference those details from the past projects, but also manage your typical detail libraries and vet and approve and details and kind of do everything under the sun related to detailing, which was not our initial vision. So I think a big part of the mold that we took and that we followed is have an initial vision, have an initial idea, build that, and then from there start talking to people about that idea, and then they'll start to guide you to get to a more polished version of that product.
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty helpful in terms of even with the problem solving, and if people are working at structural engineering firms, your firms have issues, they have problems, and getting something in terms of, hey, is this, if we had a spreadsheet or if we had some preliminary software, would you guys even use it? Is it not user friendly? Or instead of going through a whole process of QA and QCing before the final thing gets out, it's, hey, we got this test spreadsheet. Would you even use it? Too complicated? And that way it can help you out. But if it gets some traction in your company, then it can become more and more of an official workflow or official software or spreadsheet. And so I feel the same thing could apply for firms, but you're actually doing it with the entire AEC market.
Yep.
And how did you even get into that in terms of, you did the market research and then you found some traction, and then what? How did you, because it seemed like you guys were just, hey, let's start this thing. We don't know what we're doing. How did you go about figuring it out from, your engineers and then now your business owners?
No, it's a great question. It is such a trial by fire type thing, especially early on. We got really lucky. So there's this program called Y Combinator that's like an incubator or accelerator program for startups. And so it's probably the most well-known and the highest regarded, accelerator program. And essentially how it works is a bunch of software companies that are in their infancy, right? They just started, or potentially they just even have an idea and they haven't built anything. They all apply to this. And then if you get into the program, it's like a 3-month kind of stint where you have all these advisors, you're with all these other startups. They're giving you advice on how to kind of build your company and how to go to market with it. They give you a little bit of money to fundraise. And then also at the end of it, it creates this environment where private equity and venture capital firms want to invest in those companies because there's a little bit of validation since they got into the program in the first place. And so we always knew about Y Combinator. We kind of just applied out of like, this is what you do as a startup. But then we ended up getting in November. So I think 3 months after we started the company, and then we started that program in January. So, maybe 4 or 5 months after we started the company, and then went through that. And that was super, super helpful in terms of like, we had the idea in terms of they don't help you develop the product necessarily, right? And that we had a good idea because we came from the industry, we knew the problems, we were talking to different people in the industry. But in terms of all of the other business stuff, building out the company, going to market, how to sell to companies, how to even reach out to them, they were really helpful in that. And I would say it just, it's called an accelerator for a reason. It really accelerated our growth as a company to going from, we have absolutely no clue what we're doing, we're just building this software and then gonna hopefully sell it to structural engineers, to being an actual company that has at least some idea of what we're doing that we can now iterate on our process.
Yeah, I love that. We got a problem. We don't really know how to solve it, but we'll find what we need to do. We need to be resourceful. So we'll go ask for help, get some guidance, and then we'll figure it out on the way. I think it's a great approach, great mindset. And Could you tell me a little bit about the software that you guys developed? You found a need in the market, and could you tell us about what the software is and some of the things that it does?
Absolutely. So we call it a detail management platform. It's a web-based application with a Revit integration. And so the goal, again, is to be an end-to-end solution for detail management. So it's to help build out detail libraries in the traditional sense. So, what most firms have right now is a Revit container file with a bunch of their standard details that they've manually extracted out from their project and deemed worthy of their detail library. And then they print out a PDF and the engineers will go through, hey, I need this sheet or I need this detail, and then put it on the drawing. But to build out that library, it's really manual. And there's a lot that kind of goes into it and to even decide which details. So we help streamline the process to build out the standard vetted approved set of details. Now, what we also realize is that that's only a subset of your details. It's only your standard details. So the other half of the product is providing kind of efficient and reliable access to details that are currently siloed in past projects. So what the software can do is we can just feed in your 100 projects that your firm has done that we think capture all of the different detailing conditions. And now if the detail is not in your detail library, you can just come to our platform and do a quick search and find details that are in past projects. And then, of course, download them into Revit using our Revit integration.
Yeah, I know for me personally, it's, hey, I got this condition. Has anyone done this concrete to beam condition? And I have to ask around the office. And then, we do have typical details, but those are typical details, right? If there's more unique conditions, you usually have to go and ask other engineers, people in the office.
Yep.
Or even worse, you have to go back into the old set and be like, does this one have it? And then that just takes forever.
Yeah, and go ahead. I was just gonna say, a lot of times, like, you don't even find it, right? And it's like you go searching for 20 minutes, and then you're like, crap, like there's nothing. This is not what I was looking for. Then you're redesigning it, and then the next time it's like, I'm not even gonna search for 20 minutes because, like, what if I don't find what I'm looking for? And then you just kind of start from maybe you do start from a typical detail, but it's just like not a really good fit.
Yeah, and I know. I remember you showed me a quick tech demo before all this, and it seemed pretty cool because it's web-based. So if you have all of your projects that are in there, and let me know if I got this right, if this is what it looked like. You could type in wood to ledger connection, basically being specific as possible, and the software can... It essentially tags not only the title of it, but the types of materials, kind of like, so you don't necessarily need to match the title, but the details themselves will have elements that it's more searchable and more smart, I guess.
Yep. So we can, essentially convert traditional organization that you have with detail libraries in terms of like what sheets you put it on. These are all our steel sheets. These are all our mold frame. These are all our wood details. And so we can translate that into groups on our platform very easily. But when you're archiving a project, you don't have any necessarily like really refined out organization. And so that's where we rely on the search engine. And yeah, like you mentioned, the search engine's not just searching through the name of the detail, because a lot of times that's not the full picture. So it's extracting information from anywhere that might have relevant information. The sheet name obviously is kind of the next step there. In Revit, there's obviously there's the title on sheet, you have view name parameters, so there's multiple parameters. And then, the crucial ingredient that I think unlocks it is just extracting all of the text from the detail itself, right? A lot of times it has the words or the terminology or the material or a specific call out on the text. So being able to search through any of that information is kind of crucial in terms of it ranking the right details at the top of the search.
Yeah, that's what I found one of the coolest things. It was like, oh, it's not just the title, because maybe I need wood and we have a call out for a ledger and HSS posts, and it can pull all of that data. It seemed like it's like the, I don't know, smart artificial intelligence. Maybe that's a good transition into AI, because that kind of what it seemed like to me. It was like, oh, this thing's smarter than just the title. It doesn't, your Control F, right? That's the always thing that annoyed me. Control F doesn't work because the titles always stink.
Yep.
But I know you mentioned AI in the beginning. Like, what do you see? I know you're in the software industry, so how can that apply to structural engineering?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, the way I look at AI is, and maybe it'll get get there one day. But right now, it's a tool to help you. It's not going to give you the final answer, right? And so it's something that you're going to feed in a prompt and get information back, and you're not going to just use that information. It's not going to give you the final answer, but maybe it can help you get to the final answer. And I think that's like, we're not anywhere close to feeding in, hey, I want to design this building, help me design this building, or design the building for me. But it can be like, hey, maybe like I'm trying to design this building and I'm noticing this problem, and then it can feedback, hey, this is potentially can give you inspiration, get you guided in the right direction. So at a high level, that's how I kind of see it helping us right now. But I'd say like the best use of AI that I've seen, being in software now, obviously, ChatGPT kind of writing prompts for you, asking generic questions, giving generic answers. Obviously, rendering is a huge thing, and I think that will start to be pretty prevalent in the architectural space, potentially more than the structural engineering space. And then in terms of like, I would say the best use case that I've seen is just help, like I mentioned earlier, helping people code. Because it's like, and again, you can't just be like, hey, I want to develop a platform, write all the code for me. But it's like, I have this issue. I need help on this part of code. And then it gets you over that hump, that hurdle of kind of figuring out the solution for that. And so now being a little removed from structural engineering, I'm sure that can transfer over to some parts of structural engineering. But I think that's another kind of challenge within our industry right now is software. And like most of the softwares that are in structural engineering right now, kind of been in structural engineering for a while. It's not a sexy industry for software companies to sell into. It's pretty small. It's pretty niche. They need very specific solutions. And so it's not like we're going to be hit with this wave of kind of AI technology specifically geared for structural engineering, which means that I think with technology in the structural engineering industry right now, it lags a little bit. And I think even with AI potentially, for solutions that are catered specifically to like, an eTabs that just like runs AI all over the place and can like really efficiently, debugging an eTabs model would potentially be a good use case. It's just, when is that going to happen? Right. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, you're right definitely about the lag in the industry. I feel if our industry had the Google budget or with all the research, we could probably click a button and get a pretty good building design, but the resources aren't there for that type of thing. So it's like I think we could, if we really wanted to, if we had all the money, we could probably get there faster, but I don't think the engineers right now have we're still trying to debug our software still. Like, our software isn't perfect, and we always have to do some quality control check or something, just because our software isn't there. And if our software isn't there, how are we going to tell AI to fix our software? But
yeah, and I think that's like the big thing. It's like, we just can't tell it to fix it, and we just need AI to tell us what potentially could be wrong to get us on the right track for fixing it. And I think that's the best use case for it. And then it's just trying to apply that to the structural engineering practice.
And did you think, from your experience, did you think structural engineers were going to learn more coding as we get into it? Maybe a mix of structural engineer or coder, or do you think they're still going to be separate? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's still going to be separate. I think that it's just going to be easier. And even nowadays, right? Like, creating a software company 10 years ago was so much more difficult because you had to code everything in your platform. Like, if we had tried to build this 10 years ago, it would have taken us twice as long, maybe even more. But now there's so many software companies, third-party vendors out there that you can utilize to help you. And so it's just, what that means is that the amount of code that goes into building our platform is significantly less than it needed to be. And I think that kind of goes with the structural engineering industry. You'll be able to start to do stuff. Software will enable us to do stuff that right now you would need to know how to code. But 5 years from now, you don't need to know how to code, but you can still do stuff and develop stuff that will do the same thing that would require right now someone to be able to know how to code.
Oh, it's like making websites. They made that a lot easier, that you don't need to learn exact code. It's all that stuff's in the back end where you don't really need to see it, but it's really more user interface friendly.
Exactly.
And you mentioned technologies. It looks like you mentioned some of when you were making the software, and you were talking about Revit a lot too. Could you go into how was that like the catalyst? Like, oh, you saw Revit and now we can get this software to interact with Revit. How did that go about, and how did that maybe that technology influence it?
Yeah. So obviously there's the other kind of big one is AutoCAD right now. And I think, most of the industry has transitioned to Revit. Our software doesn't work with AutoCAD. And it's not because it's like AutoCAD's an old software. It's just the way that it specifically works. Within AutoCAD, you have a bunch of details and a bunch of stuff in one model space. And so you can't cleanly separate and break apart those models into individual details. Whereas in Revit, each detail is in its own view. And so that's what enables us to kind of tap into the API of Revit and essentially, break apart these models and put them up into our platform all automatically. But I think, Revit is it's a really interesting and unique software. It's, so in depth. And it also has, like 80% of the market share. Everybody has to use Revit. It takes so long to learn Revit. And it's also not that great of a software. When you start to take a step back, there are so many like shortcomings with it that are just really easy fixes, but Autodesk doesn't need to fix it because there's no competition really, right? And so the best example of that is like a struggle that we run into is a detail from Revit 23 can't be used in a Revit 22 project. Yeah. It's like, why not? It's just so simple. It's not a model. It's just line work and components. Like, this should be so simple. Like, I'm sure it's a day worth of work on Autodesk's side. They just don't care. And potentially it's also incentive to just kind of keep getting the newer and newer version. And so you have to create a bunch of workarounds. But once you really dive into the weeds, there's so many different types of those things within the Revit platform that it's like, this should be able to work better. They just have no incentive to need it to work better because no one can switch off of it. It's so implanted in our industry right now.
Yeah. And what's the typical workflow because for your software, it's architects, engineers, how has that helped them in their workflow? Like, what have you seen that they just really love because it allowed them to get this unique workflow or to help them solve some of their biggest problems? What are those things?
Within our platform?
Yeah, for Pirros.
Yeah. So, a big part of our workflow, building off of the current kind of structural engineering workflow of grabbing your details, marking them up in Bluebeam and sending them to a drafter. Essentially what you can do in our platform is you go searching for your details, you find your different details that you want to bring in, and then you essentially add it to a cart. It's like an Amazon cart, right? You grab all those details, you put them in your cart, you export them to Bluebeam, you mark them up in Bluebeam, and then through our platform, you can just share all this information with your drafter. And then the drafter, you don't have to send a bunch of different links. Your drafter just gets that information. They have your markups. They have all the details that they want to bring into Revit, and then they just kind of one click into Revit. So it's kind of creating that full workflow from engineer to the transfer of information to the drafter. That's been a big one in our platform for the structural engineering side that honestly isn't as present in the architectural industry because everybody in the architectural industry is really doing their own detailing inside of Revit.
Yeah, I know that's, for me, that's the thing, right? It's here's the detail, let's go find it, let's import it. And then, yeah, for me, I'm mainly the engineer, so I'm not an expert at the BIM stuff, but I know there's a whole BIM thing that helps. There's a workflow there too, like you were mentioning, that I'm not even aware of, but I know that can definitely help, and that's like a pain point.
Yeah, and to just, a big part of that we help solve is pulling a detail from an old Revit model is sometimes a huge pain point for your job.
I've heard that
because you have to, they have to open up a big model, and if that model's in like Revit 2015, like good luck, like it's going to take half an hour to upgrade that model. And so that's what's kind of great about our platform is it breaks apart these models into individual RVT files. So when you're bringing in a detail from an old project, it just needs to upgrade that single detail and doesn't need to open the model, doesn't need to upgrade it. It just upgrades that single drafting view, and that upgrade time happens in a split second. So for the drafters, it can just save a lot of time when it's pulling in details that potentially don't get pulled in on a regular basis.
Awesome. Yeah, I know we'll provide links to that too, because do you provide any free demos or if for any engineers that are interested in that?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can sign up for a demo on our website. And that's the best way to kind of understand how the platform works, because there's only so much that can be conveyed, through a website or through words. The best way to understand how our platform works is to actually see it in action. And then you can kind of get the full kind of like understanding of what the whole thing does, right? Rather than individual features and individual workflows.
Yeah, because I know you saw it. You found out the pain point and that the market has, that every architecture engineering firm has. And if they haven't found your software, they're trying to find their own solutions for this, for all the details with all the problems, and with BIM too, with the Revit issues.
And some firms have developed their own like software. It's pretty cool. Like, because I've talked to hundreds of structural engineering firms at this point, and there's every 1 in 100, right, or 1 in every 50 will have actually developed their own in-house solution that is similar. The goal is similar to our platform. There's just so many challenges with developing an in-house.
Yeah,
because you don't have a staff of 5 engineers working on it, right? That's not your job, and then there's ongoing maintenance costs, and it's hard to develop new features. Which is why software as a service exists, I guess.
And wouldn't you need to hire software engineers or someone to actually do that? Or getting really involved in the coding? That's more than just Excel, right?
Oh yeah. And it's usually that they have like one person in their firm that's capable of doing it. It's like if my co-founder Ari had stayed there for 20 years, and then this was his kind of like life's work of developing this thing. But then the other challenge is that like once that person leaves, if you don't have someone that can kind of keep it up, 5 years down the road, that program's going to be broken and you can't use it.
Yeah, because it's real software engineering coding that a typical engineer is not going to know unless they really were into it. So yeah, so it's either that or hire software developers, which I don't know how many firms have the budget for, but probably the big firms, the huge ones. But yeah, that's a whole endeavor that they have to figure out their own problem. So that's pretty cool. You provide a web-based one. And in your new role, just to kind of close things out, I'm curious about what's your role now, and what skills have you learned, and how have you evolved from structural engineer to COO, I believe, right now?
Yeah. COO, when we're a company of 6 people like we are, the titles matter a little bit less. You kind of wear a lot of hats, right? But what a large chunk of what my day-to-day is, and what it has been for that past year, is like almost a sales guy. I'm finding companies, I'm reaching out to those companies, I'm booking meetings with those companies, and then I'm selling our software to them, trying to understand what their specific needs are. Do they have a need for our platform, right? Almost like diagnosing the problem. And then if they do have it, then trying to kind of work through and be like, you guys need this. Now let's go from we want this to let's actually implement this into our firm, right? Let's decide to buy it, and then let's adopt it and implement it in our firm. So basically I'm just talking to different companies every day. I talk to like 8 different companies, and I just have a bunch of meetings with these companies, trying to understand their needs and if our platform can solve their needs. But then, that's a good chunk of my working hours. But as a founder of a software company, it's certainly, I put in a lot more hours than I did as a structural engineer, which again, it's like when you're running your own company, you're motivated to do that a little bit more, right? Because also it's just, we don't have the luxury of kind of doing a normal work week. So on all those other hours, it's like talking about the product, right? Talking about strategy, talking about our go-to-market strategy. Marketing is a big thing that we're getting into. And then, of course, being a manager and managing employees. So it's a lot of different hats that we wear. But for the past year, I would say the majority of my time or biggest chunk of my time has just been selling to architectural and structural engineering companies.
Yeah, that's the challenge of entrepreneurship, right? You don't make money, you don't eat. I mean, it's not like being an employee, but yeah, I mean, you have all that passion to drive you. I'm curious too about, so you were an engineer, and now you're doing more sales stuff. Was that something that you were always good at, or what was your attitude when you were an engineer? Because I know most engineers don't go into engineering to be like, to go sell their services. They want to do engineering work. What was your mindset on that? Maybe how has it evolved?
Yeah, I mean, I still don't know if I'm good at actually selling. I know what I'm good at is like kind of understanding the needs of our potential customers now and describing how our platform could help them. But that's just because I've done, 500 plus meetings by now, and that's just through reps. But that's the thing with selling is that like anybody can kind of do it. It's just having the right mentality, being motivated to do it. And then the thing with sales is so repetitive. There's so many reps that you get that like, yeah, the first time I did a sales call, the first time I demoed a company, I was probably crap at it. But now, every time you get slightly better and better. And that's like, especially for the employees that we're looking for, like we don't really care about sales experience or experience in anything specific to our role. It's more like you have the ability to learn, you want to learn, you have the motivation to kind of like work hard and be all in. And you're kind of like hungry and want that part of it. And the majority of learning will be done on the job. And that's like, as a founder, I mean, that's probably the coolest part about what we've done. It's just like the amount of different things we've learned. Also like figuring out what you like and what you don't like different parts of the job, because you do so many different types of jobs. Like you figure out what you have to do. Like, we have to review like legal documents and stuff every now and then. And like, it's crazy because both my parents are lawyers, but I absolutely like I cannot like review any sort of legal documents. And it's not that I didn't necessarily know that before, but like it forces you to do all these different tasks. And then you can see, oh wow, like this task that I would have never done. Like something that I've realized is I really like the kind of sales operations aspect of it. So like the workflows and optimizing that. How the heck was I going to know that without having gone through this experience, right? So I think that's kind of the cool part of this experience.
Yeah, that's cool how you did do like an accelerated learning type of thing, because you needed to learn all of these different skills, which I think is really cool. Because I think for engineers, I think if they ever want to get to a principal level or start their own firms, these are the skills that they need to learn. They just haven't been put in that position yet, like you have, where, okay, you're blessed to do it. You have to learn more than just engineering skills. It's business skills and people skills. And
exactly.
Some of them are often, I think engineers are often introverted, but I think like you said, they can make, if they're willing to learn and they have that problem solving mindset, it can help them grow a lot, because even though they're introverted, they tend to listen more than maybe an extroverted salesman. So yep, there's advantages to
sales is all about listening.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter, for that.
And I would say, the last thing I would add to that is like, yeah, if you're an introvert or extrovert, it doesn't really matter. It's like, it's just doing it. If you can motivate yourself to get over the hump, and like, something that I had to do really early on is I had to make a bunch of cold calls. And like the first few weeks that I would do that, I would like sit at my desk and I'd be like, this sucks. Like, I do not like want to just like call this random principal out of the blue. Like, he's not going to want to talk to me. And, but there would be times where I would like be very unproductive that day because I'd be scared of doing it and I wouldn't want to do it. And then once you start to do it a little bit, you just get used to it and you kind of get over that hump and you develop that thick skin. And then it's all just about doing it, right? And getting used to it. And then you can kind of, you enable yourself to do anything, regardless of what type of person you are.
Yeah, you don't take it personal, and you can, all right, that's a no. Let's on to the next one, because all it takes is maybe that one or two clients to get started, and then everything else builds from there. You just need that one to get it going, and then you can get some momentum. And yeah, no, that's just funny, just because it's like maybe with all this texting now, or with all of the communication programs, is like, yeah, pick up the phone. It's like the best type of communication, I think. But getting more involved in that. But did you ever have any final advice for engineers out there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's stuff that we've talked about already, but it's like not being scared of kind of like trying that new thing and just recognizing that the only way the best way to learn is just by doing it. And so like, whether that's in something in your personal life, or that's something in your professional life, if you're like thinking about doing something, just do it, right? And then if it's not the right decision, you'll learn if it's not the right decision. And I think that's the mentality that we've had to have as a company, and that everybody should have. Like, even if you're introverted, and if it's something that you don't like to do, then at least you'll learn that you don't like to do it. Or if it's something that you can't do, at least you'll learn you can't do it. But you will never know until you kind of try to do it. And I think that's a big thing. The other thing is just like, especially earlier on in your career, I would say putting more into your career. I mean, your career is already such a big part of your life. So the more you put in, the more you get out. And it's been really rewarding for at least myself, kind of taking it to that next level of just really putting, everything into it, because it is going to be such a big part of your life regardless. So I would say, in your early 20s, you have the luxury of being able to put a little bit more in, and you should definitely do it if you can.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Peter. Thanks for sharing your story. I appreciate the drive that you show, the passion that you show for the company, and getting out there and having that entrepreneurial mindset that we don't know how to do it, but we're going to find out. I think that's something that we can all benefit from. So definitely appreciate that. For engineers out there, check out Pirros if you have that problem, or if you're an architect too. I know check out the demo. It's pretty cool. So thanks again, Peter.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed the episode today. We'd love to hear your feedback, comments, and/or questions. To leave them, please visit structuralengineeringchannel.com. There you'll find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources or websites mentioned during this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next time, we wish you the best in all of your structural engineering endeavors.